Hi, my name's John Holton. I'm a lecturer in ancient history at Newcastle University, and I'm giving a short taster on the module HCA 1008, Global Ancient Histories, which I designed and I'm the module leader for. This is a module that's compulsory for our degree program V110, it's ancient history, but it's also optional for our programs in classical studies, classics, and classical studies in English. And indeed, it's an option for some other programs beyond that in the school and in the faculty here at Newcastle. Essentially, the module is to learn about global ancient histories from a global presence. So looking at ancient histories plural in a worldwide sense, reflecting the fact that we live in a modern, complex, big world today. So the idea is to learn about ancient histories beyond the fairly Eurocentric focus of Greece and Rome, in an innovative and interesting manner, looking at what other societies, cultures, peoples are developing complex societies in global antiquity. Now, it's an interdisciplinary module, and I mean that in a wide range of senses. It's interdisciplinary in terms of its topic, so we'll be looking at things beyond the normal canon in classics and ancient history, stretching into other disciplines, looking at Egypt and China, South America, things like that. It's also interdisciplinary in terms of its method, the way that we teach the module, the reading that's assigned to it, and it's also interdisciplinary in terms of who actually teaches the module. This is a collaborative module which is taught by members of staff from across the School of History, Classics and Archaeology, bringing to bear their expertise in a wide range of different topics. So you have historians alongside archaeologists, alongside classicists who are introducing content in this module. The emphasis on this module as a stage one first year module, it's not about building a core set of knowledge to hang later things on, but rather about developing perspectives and learning skills through that development of perspectives. And so you'll be working in this module both individually and in groups to develop these skills and perspectives. The assessments linked to this are based on individual reflective thinking as well as traditional source-based argumentation. So in other words, this is a module where we want to learn what the students' exposure to new materials has elicited in them. So what ideas have they generated as a result of looking at new materials, and what perspectives does that open up for their future study? So the module in a nutshell is going beyond what we usually look at in ancient history, which is roughly in this area of the world map, and seeing what else is out there in the period before about 500 AD, although that's a flexible boundary. Next year, that's 2021-2022, this module will have 11 weeks of content, and it will be organised thematically, and each week will have a unifying weekly question that it seeks to answer. And the emphasis in these weeks and across the module is about drawing out global comparatives, so drawing out studies of historical societies from across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. So pretty much all continents covered, although I don't think we've covered Australia yet. Maybe something for the future. So we start the module with a question: what are global ancient histories? Introducing students to the idea of looking beyond one society, one culture, and looking at a plurality of different societies and cultures across the world. What are the methodological considerations that you have to develop in order to do that? And how do you actually structure a focus on this topic, global ancient history? So that's the foundation for the module, and we then move on to more specific questions, and each question is developed in the course of a single week. So we will have things like, what makes a king a king? So looking at monarchy, the most omnipresent form of government in global antiquity. What makes a city? A city, again, almost a staple of human civilization from the 4th millennium BC onwards, and indeed further back than that. What's the value of the past? So how did societies across the world think about their own histories? How did they learn from that knowledge of their own histories? How did they record them? How do ideas spread? And so that's an interesting week where look at things like the spread of Buddhism as a kind of religion, as a form of culture in Asia. So each week seeks to answer a question, but it also, in the course of answering that question, draws on a range of global comparatives to flesh out any answer to that question. So in other words, an answer to the question, what is a city, necessarily takes account of what is a city in terms of history of societies in Asia, in Europe, in South America, in Africa, and so on. Now, we teach this module through a variety of different teaching methods. It's large lectures combined with small group seminar teaching. So the large lectures to introduce you to big concepts and ideas, frameworks, the small groups to further develop a detailed understanding of these ideas in consultation with your fellow students as peers. They'll be supported by high quality online materials, both in the form of curated readings, but also high quality recorded videos that you can use to consolidate your learning and introduce particularly tricky concepts. There'll be group work that you'll be doing both online and in person, and there will be a heavy element of independent reading and research. So in other words, plenty of scope for you to develop your own areas of interest in the module and pursue them in the assessment and in the weekly readings that you'll be completing. So there's a variety of different things that go into the learning for this module. I'm going to end by talking very briefly about an example from the week that I teach about kingship. One of the questions that we'll consider is what makes a king a king? So how do you define kingship in a global sense, in other words? One of the things that we do there is explore the links between royal power and the gods. So how are kings and the royal families around them linked to the gods, both in their own self-construction and in the understanding of the peoples in the societies that they rule over? There's a lot of difference, as you might expect, in pursuing a question like this. So societies globally come up with different responses to a question like this. But nonetheless, there are some essential commonalities which give a sense of what the institution means in a global sense. So one, for instance, you can see in one of the archetypal pieces of literature from ancient Europe, that is Homer's Iliad. You can see that the leader of the Achaeans, the Greeks, in the war against the Trojans, Agamemnon, has a whole range of sacrificial responsibilities on behalf of his army. So in other words, it's his job as the leader, the chief of chiefs, the king, in other words, to communicate with the gods, to win their divine favor for the army's expeditions, and to avert anything bad from happening. So in other words, Agamemnon has an almost intercessory role between the peoples that he is ruling over and the gods who sit above him. He's the intermediary, he's the link, he's the one that ensures divine favor. That's a key role, and that's a defining part of his authority. We see something essentially similar, although obviously regionally specific, in the case of Maya society from Central America in the first millennium AD, the so-called classic Maya period from between AD 250 and 900, well before European discovery and exploration of the Americas. This is a society which has a wide range of festivals that involve animal sacrifice and bloodletting, in which the royal family, particularly the king of a particular city-state, was centrally involved. In fact, sacrifice was often ritualized and involved a highly specific means of royal self-mutilation. So a member of the royal family, the king or his wife or their extended family, would pierce a body part and then use the blood that flows from that piercing to smear on a divine image, like a sculpture or a sacred image of a Mayan god. The idea being that royal blood has power, and that it should be used in communication with the gods in order to intercede on behalf of the people that the kings are ruling over. So this is a kind of self-mutilation. It's a form of sacrifice to the gods in order to bring about good outcomes. And in particular, in my society, we see quite often sacrifices like this intended for weather gods. And this reflects the historical fact that in Central America, in Mayan society, there was a huge dependence on the maize crop, so basically grain. So sacrifice to weather gods was considered to be an important part of ensuring that the whole kingdom would have enough food to eat. So what we're seeing here is, something that's regionally specific, as I say, but it's essentially the same set of functions that we can see in the case of Agamemnon in the Iliad. It is the royal figure interceding on behalf of his peoples with the god above them to bring about good outcomes and to avert bad things from happening. It's that same intercessory role. The king, in both cases, stands as the bridge between the gods and the people. And that's bound up in the construction of his royal authority. So that's a nice example, and there are plenty more examples from worldwide about this, of so-called sacred kingship of various kinds. So that's where I wanted to end. I've talked through the module itself, and I've given you a little taste of the kind of thing that we'll study in it. If you have any more questions about the module, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. You'll be able to find my email address from my staff profile.